Hello, this is McMulligan here, and something happened earlier. So, I recorded this part before, but none of the recording was saved for some damned reason due to some error with my recording software. So, I ended up going and killing the gargoyles, and going through the area and essentially just talking to myself considering none of it even got saved. Bloody fucking recording software mishaps. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this area once again and talk about, or more or less go over what I talked about there. First thing to note currently is, in the previous video with Solaire, where we met Solaire, there's something to note about him and his covenant with Lord Gwyn. The Warriors of Sunlight are obviously the followers of Gwyn, seeking the sun, trying to keep the flame going. And something to note about Gwyn is, we saw in the opening cutscene that more or less he was the Lord of Lordran. All the gods more or less followed his will. Humanity followed underneath him as well. And the reason for the Stage of Fire is because of Gwyn. The reason why it keeps going while these undead are around is because he just chose to keep the fire going instead of letting it die. There are a few theories behind this, why he did this. The one I subscribe to, however, is the fact that I'm pretty certain he just feared the Age of Man, what humanity would do if they gained power over this world, if this became their true domain. As it would bring an age of dark, an age without the need of fire. At least in the sense of this kind of fire. Gwyn feared that. He very much so feared that. Actually, while I'm here, I can go ahead and collect these items. I wish the command prompts wouldn't just, like... Because I didn't even... I pressed that second button, but was already moving away, like... Probably, like, 2 seconds before I even... I don't know. Another one is, Dark Souls 1 here is pretty clunky. That's alright, he's back there now. But to continue on what I was going on about... explanation for Lord Gwyn. There are a few things in the lore about him. A lot of things, actually. Him and his family, specifically. He had 2 sons and a daughter. I believe so. Yes, 2 sons and a daughter. I forget each one's specific names, but there was Gwendolyn and Guinevere that we know of. There was also Gwendolyn was the daughter of the Sunlight. We'll meet an illusion of her later on down the line. She's already dead. But his other son, Guinevere, well, he raised that son as a daughter. It's kind of weird. The reason for this being was he was incredibly frail, and his domain was also that of the moon, rather than the sun. And in Gwyn's eyes, the domain of the moon is a very feminine domain, so he chose to raise him as a daughter rather than a son. It's this whole weird thing going on there. I won't cover it too much, but essentially speaking, those are his children. And his other son as well, who we only get faint mention of throughout the games. There's a theory going on that, actually when we get to the NPC in question, I'll explain it there. But, another thing to note, is that guy right there will actually run back here if you're going through here for the first time. I'm just going through this way because there's not too much to look at going through the other roundabout way, other than there just being a lot of hollows to kill and some Balder Knights who are... Speaking of Balder Knights, here's one. So I'd actually show you these guys. They're not too terribly difficult to deal with. Well, the ones with the rapiers are. But those ones can parry you, and they're also really hard to backstab, unlike that version of them. Doesn't help that they're always in a tight corner space like this, too. But I'm just going to be hitting up the key points here, so this video will be a bit quicker than the last few. Oh, I'll die. There's also that possibility. Wow, I did not expect them to do that much damage to me. That's alright, though. Just need to do a better job of avoiding those when I'm going through this time. What are these guys? That one. And we'll continue down here before heading into the chapel. Again, I apologize, there is no boss to kill up there, as I have already dealt with it, but I will still showcase the information about it nonetheless. We also met 2 NPCs who we saw the dialogue for, but sadly, I don't think I can get Andre to run through his dialogue again, but I can try. In either case, I'll still give the explanation behind him. In this area. This area is like a little chapel, as you can see. Kind of an offshoot from the other area.
Well, hello again. You seem to be doing all right. Need anything forged?
Yeah, well, perhaps.
Old church. It was abandoned in favor of the church that you passed through. There are paths leading from here to 2 forbidden plains, Sen's Fortress and the Darkroot Garden. They attract all sorts of lunatics. No one as cultured as yourself. It's fine to be undead, but keep a level head, eh?
Always liked Andre. It's a very nice man, trying to look out for you.
Sen's Fortress is an old proving grounds built by the ancient gods. It is the only route leading to the great Anor Londo. Of course, most fools can't even find their way into that fortified death trap, but they won't stop trying. Take that bumbling Sir Onion.
Anything else to talk about?
The Darkroot Garden, although I've heard rumors of a divine.
This is dialogue we didn't have before the fight.
Those who get stumped in the catacombs seeking for divine weapons. I know little.
Ah, he's just repeating himself now. Oh, that was another part of his dialogue. If you just walk up from him, he'll think you're going hollow. But yes, there's a few things going on about Andre. Something you'll notice about him is he bears a remarking resemblance to Lord Gwyn himself. It is theorized that he is one of the lost sons of Gwyn. And there's a lot of merit to this theory, including in how his appearance, how he acts, and the fact of his stature. He is huge. And you also meet him in the 3rd game as well, which is thousands upon thousands of years later on past this one. Honestly, it might just be possible that he might be a half-human, half-god. Bastard child of Gwyn. He also talked about the 2 other areas that we'll be going into soon. Darkroot Basin and Sen's Fortress. Well, Sen's Fortress is a bit farther away. And there it is. Part of the reason that we went up here to go and kill the gargoyles is to ring the bells of awakening, which will eventually open up the gates to Sen's Fortress. One above, one below, as our friend and Firelink, or, well, quote-unquote friend and Firelink told us. We have now rung one of them, the one up here. Something to note about it, actually, is when another player in their own world, when you're online, rings their own bell, you can hear it ringing in your own world. Just an interesting little note to go over. Something else to note is an item I picked up over here, the Firekeeper Soul. The Firekeeper Soul is, well, the soul of a Firekeeper. That was pretty straightforward, but something to note in its item description is that Firekeepers are essentially a manifestation of their own bonfire. It holds infinite humanity just about. It's why when a Firekeeper dies, it's kind of a big deal. And there are two other things to note about the Firekeepers. One, they are all female. It is a role that can only be taken on by women. The other thing of note is that every Firekeeper gives up something to become a Firekeeper. Whether that be the ability to speak or the ability to see, you know, things of that nature. In this game, we met that one Firekeeper down in Firelink who no longer has the ability to speak. Took an oath to not speak, and I believe they even cut out her tongue. In the third game, well, the Firekeeper of Firelink gave up her sight. And there's another Firekeeper in this game that also gave up something else, but we will get to her when we get into that part of the game. For now, all you need to know is they are the ones that keep keep all the bonfires going. It's also a theory that the reason why so many of these bonfires are no longer lit is because, well, the Firekeepers died and are no longer tending to them, so they sort of just died away. But you came along and relit them. Essentially, what I assume is there's still much humanity to be burned that's been burnt on those bonfires, but because they haven't been kept kindling with it, well, there is no Firekeeper to keep them kindling. They sort of over time just were not lit anymore until you came along. There was also a priest up here and a cathedral knight down there. Something to note about the cathedral knight is he was like twice the size of us. And an interesting bit on the lore is that I talked about earlier that we're all pygmies, is that man was an example of one of the actual humans in the game, or a true human that went hollow. They might seem like a giant to us, but in all due reality, that was a man. This Baller Knight, a pygmy, just like us. Rather tall pygmy, though. Come on. This is why I don't like dealing with the rapier ones. I like to backstab these guys, but these ones are like... I can never seem to hit the sweet spot for them. But back up through there, you actually meet an NPC who is trapped, who I've already freed, actually. The dialogue with him is pretty simple. He basically thanks you for freeing him, and it's also part of the reason why starting with the Master Key is a very good thing, because it allows you to just free him without having to get the key for it. But he'll be sitting right in here, and the most things you need to know is he's learning of Kareem, which is a land I'll go over a bit later. But for now, know that he is a bit of a troublesome NPC, as he kills someone very important at some point that we don't want to die. But we can save, thankfully. He also gives us a very nice ring, a very useful ring. One that once we return to Firelink, I will probably equip almost immediately. But up here is where you fight the gargoyles. Unfortunately, they're already dead, so I can't show that off, but something to note about this fight is you'll be fighting two of them. At the beginning, there will be one who's mostly into melee with you. Lightning is very effective against them, so using those lightning resins is very useful. And another thing to note about them is the one that has its tail. If you cut off the tail, you'll actually get the axe that's attached to his tail as a weapon. And it also very much inhibits his ability to fight you, as the thing with his tail attacks is they can go through your shields. It's very annoying to deal with, but that is your warning when fighting them. I also believe that we meet a friend in here. Who I didn't talk to yet. No, he's not here. He wasn't here when I came back here last time either. Usually he's right here. It's odd. But as you can see from up here, we can see a lot of the land. Dark Root Basin down through there. All these different places. I believe the Dark Root Basin's actually over in that... Yeah, it's over that way. It goes all the way around. This is more what I was talking about, is you see all these areas in the game, and you will eventually be able to visit them all. That indeed is Sin's Fortress all over there. Dark Root Basin goes a ways all throughout here. And there'll be more lore to explore when we get to the Dark Root Basin as well. And something to note from what Andre said earlier, yes, that old chapel was indeed the chapel before this one, and then they built this as more of a monument to what was going on. And it just shows that this world did change as time went on, and we get a little bit of hints into things that happened. Andre himself, as I talked about earlier, being a potential son of Gwyn, if you're paying attention to him at all. As well as some other neat little secrets along the way. Actually, let's do a quick inventory check before I call it here. Just to make sure that I have covered everything with you good people. Oh, didn't mean to do that. Yes, I believe I've covered everything for now. Anyway. Hopefully the recording went well this time. But this has been McMulligan. I hope you all have a great day,